Hello ladies and gentlemen, enjoy today's episode of Genesis of Lands. Watch, listen and learn, and don't forget to click the subscribe button and comment below on what you feel about today's video. Thank you very much. Ciao ciao.
There's a town in Romania that looks like it jumped straight out of a fairy tale, where colorful medieval houses line cobblestone streets, where 9 ancient towers still stand guard over walls built 700 years ago, where a clock tower changes its carved figures every day of the week, where you can walk through the same narrow passages that knights and merchants walked through centuries ago. This is Sighisoara, the best preserved medieval town in all of Transylvania, a place so perfectly preserved that it's like stepping into a time machine. But Sighisoara is famous for another reason too. This is where a real prince was born in 1431. A prince who became so feared that stories about him spread across Europe. A prince whose nickname was the Impaler. A prince whose real life inspired one of the most famous monsters in all of literature, Count Dracula. But here's something important to understand. The real prince wasn't a vampire. He didn't drink blood. He couldn't turn into a bat. He was a real person who lived over 500 years ago. And in his own country, Romania, he's not remembered as a monster. He's remembered as a hero who protected his people from a powerful enemy. So who was the real Dracula? And how did a prince become a vampire in people's imaginations? Let's start with the town itself. About 900 years ago, in the 1100s, the king of Hungary had a problem. His kingdom's border with other lands needed to be protected. So he invited German settlers called Saxons to come live in a region called Transylvania. Transylvania means beyond the forest in Latin. It was a wild, mountainous area covered in thick forests. The king made the Saxons a deal. If you build fortified towns to defend the border, I'll let you govern yourselves and you won't have to pay as many taxes. The Saxons agreed. They were skilled builders, craftspeople, and traders. They knew how to build strong walls and organize towns. The Saxons built 7 fortified citadel towns in Transylvania. These became known as the Siebenburgen, German for 7 fortresses. Sighisoara was one of them. The Saxons chose to build it on top of the tallest hill in the area. From up there, you could see enemies approaching from miles away. They built thick stone walls all around the hilltop. They built 14 towers, each one sponsored by a different guild. In medieval times, guilds were like clubs for people who did the same job. There was a tailor's tower for people who made clothes, a shoemaker's tower, a butcher's tower, a tinsmith's tower for people who worked with metal. Each guild was responsible for defending their own tower during attacks. The towers and walls were finished in the 1300s and 1400s. Today, 9 of the 14 towers still stand, which is amazing. Most medieval walls in Europe have crumbled or been torn down. But Sighisoara survived. The centerpiece of the citadel is the clock tower. It's 64 meters tall. That's about as tall as a 20-story building. It was built between 1556 and 1585 and has been keeping time for over 400 years. The clock has special moving figures, wooden carvings that rotate. There's a different figure for each day of the week. Monday's figure is Diana, goddess of the hunt. Tuesday is Mars, god of war. Wednesday is Mercury, and so on. When midnight strikes, the figures change to show the new day. The clock tower is also the entrance to the old town. You walk through an archway at the bottom of the tower, and suddenly you're in the medieval citadel. Narrow cobblestone streets. Colorful buildings in yellow, orange, pink, and blue. Small shops selling pottery and crafts. Cafes with outdoor tables. Feels like you've traveled back in time. Now let's talk about Dracula. In the year 1431, a baby boy was born in a yellow house right in the main square of Sighisoara. His father was named Vlad the Impaler. His mother was Niajna of Moldavia. They named their baby boy Vlad III. But why was the father called Dracula? That's an important part of the story. In 1408, Vlad II had been inducted into something called the Order of the Dragon. This was a special group of knights who promised to defend Christianity and fight against the Ottoman Empire, modern-day Turkey, which was very powerful back then. In Latin, the word for dragon is Draco. In Romanian, Dracul means the dragon. So, Vlad Dracul meant Vlad the Dragon. It was actually a title of honor. Dragons in medieval times were symbols of strength, bravery, and leadership. When his son was born, people called the baby Dracula. In Old Romanian, that meant son of the dragon, or son of Dracul. Over time, this became Dracula. So Dracula wasn't originally a scary name at all. It just meant the dragon prince's son. Little Vlad III lived in that yellow house in Sighisoara with his family until he was about 4 years old. Then in 1435, his father became the ruler of Wallachia, a region south of Transylvania. The family moved to Targovist, which became their new capital. Growing up as a prince wasn't easy. When Vlad was about 11 years old, something terrible happened. His father made a deal with the Ottoman Sultan to keep peace. As part of the deal, the Sultan demanded that Vlad and his younger brother Radu be sent to live with the Ottomans as hostages. Imagine being 11 years old and taken away from your family to live with your father's enemies. Vlad and his brother spent years as prisoners in the Ottoman Empire. They were treated okay, they received education and military training. But they couldn't leave. Vlad hated every minute of it. Meanwhile, terrible things were happening back home. In 1447, Vlad's father and older brother were killed by enemies. Young Vlad was now alone, far from home, and had lost his father and brother. Finally, in 1448, when Vlad was 17, the Ottomans released him. He immediately tried to take back his father's throne in Wallachia. But other people wanted to be ruler too. For the next several years, Vlad fought to become prince. He lost the throne, won it back, lost it again. It was a constant battle. In 1456, Vlad finally became the ruler of Wallachia for real. He was 25 years old and he had a plan. The Ottoman Empire was trying to conquer all of Europe. They had already taken Constantinople, now Istanbul, in 1453. Romania was next on their list. Vlad decided he would stop them no matter what it took. This is where Vlad got his scary nickname, Vlad Teeps, which means Vlad the Impaler. I need to be honest with you about something difficult. Vlad used a very brutal punishment against his enemies. When he captured enemy soldiers or people he thought were criminals or traitors, he would impale them. That's a horrible way to hurt someone, and I won't describe the details because they're too scary. But it was an extremely painful and frightening punishment. Vlad impaled thousands of people. Some historians say 40,000 to 100,000 people over his lifetime. He would leave them displayed as a warning to his enemies. When Ottoman armies approached Wallachia and saw forests of impaled soldiers, they were so terrified that sometimes they turned around and went home without fighting. Was this cruel? Absolutely. Was it terrifying? Yes. But here's what's important to understand. In medieval times, many rulers used brutal punishments. The Ottomans did too. The difference was that Vlad used these methods specifically as psychological warfare, to make his enemies too scared to attack. And it worked. His small kingdom successfully defended itself against the huge Ottoman Empire. In Romania today, many people consider Vlad a hero. Not because of the impaling, but because he protected Romanian lands from being conquered. He stood up to a much more powerful enemy and won. He also had a reputation for being very strict about honesty. Legends say he punished thieves and liars harshly, making Wallachia one of the safest places to travel at the time. Vlad ruled Wallachia on and off until 1476, when he died in battle. He was only about 45 years old. According to legend, his body was buried at Snagov Monastery, though no one knows for sure. So if Vlad the Impaler was a real prince who died in 1476, how did he become the vampire Count Dracula? Fast forward to 1897, over 400 years later. An Irish writer named Bram Stoker published a book called Dracula. It was a horror novel about a vampire count who lived in a castle in Transylvania and wanted to move to England to drink people's blood. Bram Stoker never actually visited Romania. But he read books about Eastern Europe and came across stories about Vlad the Impaler. He thought Dracula was a perfect name for a vampire. He also used the region of Transylvania as the setting because it seemed mysterious and scary to people in Western Europe. The book became hugely popular. Then came movies, hundreds of them. The first Dracula movie was made in 1922. Since then there have been countless films, TV shows, and books about Count Dracula. The vampire has become one of the most famous monsters in the world. But here's the important part. The fictional vampire Count Dracula and the real Prince Vlad the Impaler are very different. The real Vlad never drank blood. He never turned into a bat. He wasn't immortal. He didn't sleep in a coffin. Those are all made-up parts of the vampire story. The only real connections are, both were called Dracula, both were connected to Transylvania, though Vlad ruled Wallachia, not Transylvania, and both had scary reputations. That's it. Everything else about vampires, the fangs, the garlic, the stakes through the heart, the sunlight, all of that came from folk tales and Bram Stoker's imagination. Today, if you visit Sighisoara, you can see Vlad's birthplace. The yellow house where he was born is still standing after almost 600 years. On the front of the building, there's a wrought iron dragon hanging above the entrance, reminding everyone of Vlad's father and the Order of the Dragon. The ground floor is now a restaurant called Casa Vlad Dracula, Dracula's house. You can eat Romanian food there, dishes like beef goulash, cabbage rolls, and polenta. They even serve things with spooky names like Dracula dinner and vampire wine for tourists who want to feel like they're part of the legend. Upstairs, there's a small museum with medieval weapons, swords, shields, crossbows, and armor. And you can see what's supposed to be Vlad's childhood room, though it's been decorated to look spooky for tourists with fake cobwebs and vampire decorations. All around Sighisoara, you'll see reminders of Dracula. There are souvenir shops selling Dracula t-shirts, magnets, and plastic vampire fangs. There's even a bust statue of Vlad in the main square. Some people think all the vampire stuff is a bit silly and touristy. But hey, if you can't have fun with Dracula stories in the actual birthplace of the person who inspired them, where can you? Every summer in late July, Sighisoara holds a medieval festival. The whole citadel turns into a giant medieval party. People dress up in knight's armor, princess gowns, and period costumes. There are sword fighting demonstrations, archery contests, and medieval music. Craftspeople show how to make pottery, work with iron, and do traditional carpentry. Everyone eats hearty medieval food and drinks. It's like the whole town travels back in time for a weekend. Besides the Dracula connection, Sighisoara is just beautiful to explore. You can climb the covered staircase, a long wooden stairway with a roof that goes up the hill to the church on the hill. It was built in 1662 so that students and teachers could reach the school at the top even during rain and snow. There are 176 steps. At the top, there's a beautiful old church and a cemetery with graves dating back to the 1600s. You can visit the different towers and walk along parts of the old medieval walls. You can explore the colorful streets and discover hidden courtyards. You can eat delicious Romanian food at cozy restaurants. You can shop for handmade pottery, woven textiles, and local crafts. Because Sighisoara is so well preserved, UNESCO declared it a World Heritage Site in 1999. That means it's recognized as being important to all of humanity and deserves special protection. It's one of the last inhabited medieval citadels in all of Europe. Most other medieval towns have been rebuilt or modernized. But in Sighisoara, people still live in centuries-old houses. They walk on stones that were laid down 700 years ago. The past and present exist together. From a fortified Saxon town in the 1100s to the birthplace of a controversial prince to the inspiration for the world's most famous vampire, Sighisoara shows us that real history is often more complicated and more interesting than the stories we tell about it. Vlad the Impaler was not a hero to everyone. He did terrible things. But he was also fighting to protect his people against a powerful enemy. He's remembered differently depending on where you're from and what stories you've heard. And Count Dracula? He's a made-up character who became way more famous than the real person who inspired him. Most people around the world have heard of Dracula the vampire. But far fewer know about Vlad III, the Romanian prince who lived 500 years ago. So here's a question for you. When a real person's story gets turned into a legend, and the legend becomes more famous than the truth, does that matter? Should we separate the real history from the stories? Or can both exist together? Sighisoara invites you to think about both. You can enjoy the Dracula fun, the spooky restaurants, the vampire souvenirs, the medieval castle atmosphere. But you can also learn the real history. About the Saxons who built the fortress. About Vlad, the complicated prince. About medieval life in Transylvania. Sighisoara, the fairy tale town where 9 towers still stand. Where cobblestone streets remember 700 years of footsteps. Where a yellow house holds the birthplace of a prince who became a legend. Where the real and the imaginary dance together under the shadow of the clock tower. The next time you see a vampire movie or read a Dracula story, remember Sighisoara. Remember that behind every monster there might be a real person. A person whose true story is more complicated, more interesting, and more human than any made-up tale. That's the real magic of this place. It reminds us that history isn't simple. That heroes can do terrible things. That scary stories often come from real events. And that sometimes the most interesting stories are the true ones, even when they're painted yellow, decorated with plastic fangs, and served with a side of goulash.